Gentlemen, it's time once again to discuss things.
Greetings and salutations, all ye faithful Gentiles of the seven-headed golden giraffe. This is your friend and compatriot, Milan Jeftik 1992, here joined by my two great friends, Ian and Bill, or Sidpa2 and Zazibar, as they like to be called sometimes. Please introduce yourselves, fellows, and just say hi. Ian,
Well,
say hi.
Here's the thing,
Yeah.
when I'm murdering someone, I prefer to be called Zazibar because it kind of sounds like a demon. But when we're just having drinks at the bar before I murder you, you can call me Bill. So.
Oh, yes, of course, sorry. Obviously. But today's subject is going to be the the best examples of storytelling, emotional storytelling in comic books. Since comic books don't have sound or and just
Wait. Hold on. I thought we were talking about atmosphere, not storytelling.
Atmosphere and stuff like that. The best forms of atmosphere in comic books. The
Okay.
best scenes of atmosphere in any comic book. It can be independent. It can be part of the two big companies, DC and Marvel. Any sort of instance where you thought that a comic book should just had excellent atmosphere in one particular scene, or the whole book, what have you. And we just discuss and after that, after we give our examples, we'll just talk about what would be our what our own theories on how comic book storytelling, what kind of effects that can have, and how we can portray deep moods with comic books.
Okay.
Okay, alright. Let me just make one announcement before we really get into it.
Go ahead.
I talked about it at the end of the show last week, and we didn't get any yet, and I'm not expecting these to flood in, but we are taking Skype-ins now, where you can record your voice and send any of us the file to our Skype, or PM me a link to download it on YouTube, and we will play your clip and then and then respond directly to the points you raised, since we announce the topic of next week at the end of each video.
Yes.
So I just wanted to let people know about that ahead of time. And once again, the Skype name is mine, Sid2, Bill,
Zazibar.
and Milan.
Milan.Jeftik5.
Okay, just a heads up on that. We'd love to get them. I love the audience participation, so that's just what I'm talking about.
One more thing. The
Yeah?
first person who is gonna do a call-in, this little promotional thing, I will draw you.
Oh,
If
cool.
If you're the first person to call in, I will draw you and make some fun art of you, if you want to.
Cool.
So
Just in case,
Call
just
us now.
Yeah, just in case I didn't mention it. Actually, I don't think I've ever brought it up. I just thought it was a given, but Milan actually drew the picture of us all sitting here in the chairs and stuff. So there's something for you guys. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's get into the topic here, okay? So Milan, since it's your topic, I'm gonna let you set the stage of discussion for it. So we're talking about examples first. What's your primary example? What's your go-to example for this,
Well,
for
my
atmosphere in comics?
Well, I'm sure both of you and the majority of all our listeners have read this little comic book called The Dark Knight Returns, by this guy by the name of Frank Miller. I'm not sure if you know him. He's some people don't like him for some reason, but I think he's a pretty good writer. He's pretty underground, and there's a scene in this graphic novel of his where Batman is chasing the Joker in at a theme park, and it's near the climax of the story. And basically, Batman chases the Joker into a love tunnel. And the Joker at this point has a batarang lodged in his eyeball, and he's bleeding profusely, and Batman has been shot. And basically, the Joker kills two people in the love tunnel. And Batman says this is the last time. This is and you just the point of the story. Batman is very old. It's the end of the career for the Dark Knight, and basically things have in Batman's dialogue thought balloons. He says this is the last time. I've let you live this long, and I will not. He's thinking like I'm going to have to kill this guy now, because this is ridiculous. And so the whole scene comes to the point where Batman catches the Joker and breaks his neck, but he doesn't kill him. And and Batman has been stabbed quite badly, and he's bleeding. And the Joker just feels so very disappointed because Batman didn't have the nerve to actually do the deed and kill the Joker. And so the Joker hears the sirens, the police sirens, because Batman's on the run from the police at this point. And he says something that's just really kind of stuck with me. See, Batman is bleeding at this point, and the Joker's neck is broken, and the Joker basically twists his head around and uses the sheer power of his madness. I don't know where he gets the strength from, but he twists his head all the way around and finishes breaking his neck, and so he's dead. And there's that one panel where Batman is just leaning against the wall, holding his guts in his belly. He's bleeding badly, and the Joker's just sitting on next to him, with his neck broke. And Batman just says, "Here, let me just pull up the actual PDF of the thing." I want to read what he says. Both Batman's dialogue thought balloons of what happened here. Whatever in him rustles as it leaves. The sirens echo through the tunnel. Tires screech. The world is growing dark and cold. And that just really got with me. Just that panel of Batman holding his bleeding side, and the Joker, with his dead grin. And it's just such a wonderful example in comics of just setting a melancholy. For some reason, whenever I read this part of the book, I always feel cold, no matter how hot my actual, the environment outside or my house is. I always get this chill down my spine when I read that, and just this feeling of absolution and just melancholy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great example.
It really is. I gotta admit, I was confused by what exactly you were getting at with the topic suggestion, and even your explanation here at the beginning still left me kind of like, I'm not really sure. But now I get what you're saying. You're talking about the moments in comics that stick with you, the moments you can recall, and the moments that make you like physically feel something.
Yeah.
All right. May I take the stage, Bill? Do you have one that's like right on the top of your head?
Yeah, and it's also something that relates to Milan, so I'll bang mine
Go
out.
ahead, Bill. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Another Frank Miller example, I was gonna do this anyway, but Milan makes me want to go do it now. Batman Year One. That to me, Dark Knight Returns definitely paints a picture of Gotham City, but I feel like Dark Knight Returns is doing it in a much more general sense. It's painting a picture of a Gotham that's more representing of basically how Frank Miller feels about every American city at that time, which was, I believe, 1987, if I'm correct.
It's really strange because it almost feels like late 70s New York in a way, because at that point, some parts of New York were basically demilitarized zones, almost. And it's just...
Wait, we're talking about Returns or Year One?
Returns. Oh, you're talking about year one.
No. I
Go
was
ahead.
just asking you if Dark Knight Returns was 87, right? Or was it? I don't know the year.
Year one almost felt like the 70s for me, like the.
I'm not talking about Year One. What year was Returns?
I believe it was 80. I'm not quite sure. Sometime in the
88. So
88.
88 or 89. Doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
I was just asking. Okay, so I feel like Dark Knight Returns paints a picture of a Gotham that's much more of a generalized how Frank Miller feels about American cities of that time period. Year One, a little bit, but it's more of a specified kind of city. Like he paints a picture of, okay, this is Gotham City. this really and Mazzucchelli's art definitely supports that.
Oh,
to
I
great
love
effect. And he just paints this picture of this really terrible city, this place you don't want to live in. It's basically hell. And in many ways, it's both Commissioner Gordon's and Batman's hell, and they're both trying to not, to bring it out of that. And they succeed to varying degrees. And that's really the sense of the Gotham you get in year one, and that's one of the best things I think year one does. I'll admit, I think it has a lot of problems, but I think that's the strongest thing it does, and both Mazzucchelli's art and the way Frank Miller has Batman, Gordon, specifically Gordon, describe the city and how terrible it is. It paints this picture of, it's a city you love to experience because of how terrible it is, and just like how interesting it is because of that, but not one you want to live in, and that's the point of year one, and that's my favorite part of year one. So I think Mazzucchelli's art and Miller's writing both support that. So that to me is, if not the best, one of the best examples of atmosphere affecting you specifically in a comic book for me, year one.
One thing.
Mazzucchelli's art. When I was reading this book, it made me think of Moscow, because me growing up in Moscow as a kid, Mazzucchelli's art, that's Moscow for me. It's just like it feels so much like the Moscow, the place where I grew up, and the thing about that, Mazzucchelli's art, he brings, as you say, Bill, it's kind of like, it's a wonderful place to visit. Well, it's almost like it feels like the darkness it's so horrible that it kind of goes all the way around and reaches this level of horror that's kind of beautiful.
It's so horrible, it's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Have either of you read Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader, written by Neil Gaiman?
Yes.
That is actually my favorite self-contained Batman story, because it's 2 issues, and it really could be 1. You don't need the first issue; it just adds to the ambiance. And for those of you that haven't read it, it's a story about Batman attending his own funeral. And what's really interesting about that is he sees all these people from, the Batman lore, from various time periods. Like, there's the old Batgirl with, that weird little V mask, whatever.
Oh, Batwoman.
Yeah, right, Batwoman.
From the 60s?
Yeah, it's got everyone in it. And it's,
wow.
They're all telling the story about how they were with Bruce Wayne. They were with Batman when he died. And each of them, are talking about it, there's the butlers, there are a couple that are really long, and those are good, but I actually really like the short ones. And one of my favorites, and this is a tangent to the example as a whole, but one of my favorites is Bullock's story, where he's talking about how they were running through the sewers together when Batman had a baby in his hands, and Bullock got up onto a railing or some kind of thing that he could hold on to as this tidal wave was rushing through the sewer system, and Batman handed him the baby and then got washed out with the sewers, got taken away in the tide. And it goes back to Bullock and he goes, people asked me how I held on, how I kept going, and I told him it's because he kept going. And that adds to the story as a whole. And eventually Batman stops going to the funeral and he exits, and he realizes he's talking to his mother, and he fully acknowledges that he's in a near-death experience, that he realizes he is dying. He thinks he's in a bed somewhere or washed up on the side of a river, bleeding to death in an alley. And he realizes that he does not, this is his one time where he doesn't have to fight it, where he doesn't have to be the man that never gives up. And it's just so well done. It's so abstract because Gaiman has the artist recreate scenes from the most iconic Batman stories. He has them recreate, images from it. And you see, these these glimpses and these little bits and pieces of all these Batman stories, and it's probably my favorite story because it's what gets the character best. Another one of the these I was with Batman when he died stories was the Batwoman character. At least I think that's who it was.
Batgirl.
Was it a yellow red costume?
Yeah, yellow red costume.
Yeah, that was Batgirl.
Okay, yeah, like I said, Batgirl. Alright, so anyways, he's with her, and she says that I told him there was nothing he could do. He could either let go of the bomb and it would explode right away, or he could wait another 2 minutes and it would explode, and either way it was going to take out the whole city. There was nothing he could do. And I told him that, and he looked at me and he said, there's always something you can do. And then he dived into the Gotham River and with the bomb. And, you know, that's how he died in that story. And it was just, you get through the story and they introduce the Goodnight Moon into Bruce's past, something that he read with his mother. And it gets really, really just, you know, tugs at the heartstrings kind of thing as you see Batman accept death, which is something you're never used to. It's like it's so juxtaposed because it is the one most un-Batman thing I've ever read, and yet it is so consistent with his character in such a powerful way. Because it's something Batman would never do. He would never accept death if he didn't have to. If he thought he could fight, then he would fight. And here he clearly knew that he could fight it, but he decided not to. He accepted that he could die. And it was just, it caught me in all the right ways, and there are very few things, and don't laugh at me because I'm going to be pissed if you. There are very few things I tear up at, but really, when I read that story, when I read that closing monologue, it always fucking gets me. Like, I always get like that, just like that little like, no, he's Batman, he can't die.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
I know what you're talking about. I love that book too, Ben. I know exactly what you're talking about. I tear up too, man.
Yeah, Bill, you gotta read that because it's really good.
I'm very intrigued. But
It's excellent. Oh, dude, one more thing. It's so odd that this story came out the very, I think it was the very, like a month or two prior to, or even in the very month that Batman R.I.P. was coming out.
No, it didn't come out during Batman R.I.P. It came out after Batman died at the hands of Darkseid.
Oh,
and that's the
even
thing is,
better.
It's considered out of canon, but it's in fan canon that this is what the Omega Effect did to Batman. Because that's the thing, in Final Crisis, Darkseid threatens Batman with the Omega Effect, which is, quote-unquote, the life that is death. And what that does is it transports you to another dimension where you are killed, brought back to life, and killed in a different way that is more horrendous than the last, alright? So that's what he was doing. And in those stories of his funeral, he was experiencing death in different ways. But because of who he was, according to fan canon, but because of the life he led, the character of a man he was able to overcome the Omega Effect, so it was no longer torture, and he was able to persevere through it. Now, it's just fan canon, but it's certainly a very interesting idea. And I do really, it's one of those things, it's fan canon, but we might as well accept it as canon in the old 52. Because it's not like they ever got a chance to contradict it.
Right. Let me just say this. I think that you kind of have to try to not give a Batman story, or at least an interesting Batman story, usually doesn't have a lack of atmosphere. I haven't read a Gotham in a very long time that didn't have a strong atmosphere, or at least this specific atmosphere. Like, a Batman story to me always has this darkness, this twistedness to it, and just this level of just like deepness of the just the world around Batman that very few, we've talked about this before too, that very few superheroes have. And I haven't read a Batman story in a long time that didn't have that, you know what I mean? Like, most Batman stories have that kind of atmosphere, that they have this specific
I'd have to agree with you. And to that point, maybe we should try to think of examples of this
Outside.
atmosphere that are not Batman.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's pull out some other non-Batman stuff. I'll throw out one right now that's not very specific, but just one that I have nostalgia for. Spider-Man comics also always had a specific kind of atmosphere to them, and not a dark one at all. And to me, and the level of atmosphere you get with a Spider-Man comic is New York City.
Yeah.
The Spider-Man comics always manage to, in different runs, different series, different stuff, always manage to paint an overarching portrait of New York City. The light parts of it, the really dark and scary parts of it, the commercial part of it, just every aspect of New York City and all of Spider-Man is brought to the surface and Spider-Man is used to personify it, comment on it, explore it. Examples: suburban New York, like Queens, Forest Hills, suburban parts of Brooklyn. Spider-Man, he swings through them. He notices the crime. He notices the kind of people that live there, and just the atmosphere of New York City. And it's encapsulated in these Spider-Man comics, and it's an interesting atmosphere. And because of the varied sections of New York City that you have, the financial district, the suburban district, the slum district, all this kind of stuff. Well, not slums,
Yeah,
but
the inner city.
poor areas. That too gives Spider-Man a very specific atmosphere and works to his character because he is, and Ian, we talked about this as well, this kind of trying to be Superman kind of character of the role model. And that's why I think it works with Spider-Man and what helps his books have a specific feel. And that was one of the things that always attracted me to Spider-Man comics as a kid, was that atmosphere.
There's almost like a folkloric aspect, a modern folkloric aspect to that. If you think about it, I mean, Spider-Man fits in New York, and if you think about it, without the historical precedent of all that, all those issues, just having a guy in red and blue leotard like swinging through the buildings, if you don't, it somehow, if it fits and it's been incorporated into the popular culture, and it fits so well. It's like it's one of those images that's just engraved in the culture now. Like for Russians, it was like the bogatiri on the horseback and looking out on the Russian countryside, and like for the Greeks, it's always like there's always those images of just heroic images that are just seem odd if you're not in the culture.
The icons of a culture.
Yeah. That's
And
right.
Spider-Man definitely has that with New York City. You're like,
Yeah.
whenever I go to New York City, I'm like, I can imagine Spider-Man swinging around. You know what I mean?
It fits. Yeah.
I'm not insane. I'm just, that's just.
No.
I just see Spider-Man swinging around, then I hop on my unicorn and ride around town and collect the rainbows.
One more thing, before we move on, like
No.
honorable. Sorry, I just have two honorable mentions, and then you guys can start talking about Batman, since we're not going to talk about Batman anymore. Well, at least try to. These two memorable scenes in Batman. The first is not actually a scene, but the whole book, Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Strikes. It's DK2 basically. Just that whole book. I know everybody hates it, but it's filled with so much buttfuck hysteria and madness. It's so insane that I just love it because it makes me laugh all the time. Like whenever I look at it, it's just so full of insanity, and I love it. And the second mention is that scene in R.I.P. where basically Batman is trying to save Jezebel, Jet, and the Joker is just mocking him, and the black and red petals, and just the atmosphere there is just intense. It's almost like being in a fun house. But
that's the thing, is I can think of a million Batman examples, but the problem with this show has been we are like all on Batman and Grant Morrison's dick.
Yeah.
So we really need to try to get away from
Okay.
Like I looked at it. I was talking to Blue Dragon 5 about it, and he was like, "You should do a video on this Batman movie and this one." I'm like, I looked at our videos, about a third of them are all Batman centric. We should kind of like, I love Batman, don't get me wrong, but we kind of need to
Okay.
Vary it up just a little bit, guys.
Yeah, that,
Since the
Batman
Robocop
is
video, we've
dark.
been pretty off Batman's dick, but in this one we're having kind of a problem because we're being very, very broad with it. So
Yeah,
let's
so,
try and like get some more examples out there.
Yeah, yeah.
From Spider-Man.
Batman is the dark unconscious, but here's a scene from Superman that always made that whenever I see it's basically one page. It's one page that just makes me cry like a little girl. Just like, oh my god, Superman! It's this one page in All Star Superman where this girl is just about to commit suicide and she's standing. It's one page. And whenever I see this page, I just cry. I can't help myself. She's just because I knew girls like this. You know, yes, I try to make it. And basically, she wants to jump. She's about to jump. She's holding her hand. She's crying. The mascara's running down her face. She's about to kill herself, and then Superman just shows up behind her and just holds her. And says, You're stronger than you think you are. Your doctor really did, get held up in traffic. Don't worry. You're stronger than you think you are." And he hugs her. It's just that's one page. That's one page, and whenever I see that page, it's like I'm tearing up now just thinking about it. It's just, oh my god, man, that's super.
All right.
All Star is a great example of that.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
has specific atmosphere that totally fits Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
An example I really like is the way that Green Lantern is done quite often. There's the way they do space, it's so interesting because when they want to take the focus off of the environment and make it more on the characters, they'll do really just basic space with just black and little, white dots. But then when they want to communicate the atmosphere and just the scope of the Green Lantern Corps, you'll notice that they start doing like really intricate galaxies in the background and all these really, really cool things. And of course that varies artist to artist, but that's just kind of an overall narrative of the books. And I love to see the way that they portray different cultures in Green Lantern, because back in the when the comics really first started as a medium, you had people like Kirby who were doing just amazing things with the environment and really trying to make it very complex and things looked alien when they were doing sci-fi books. But then it kind of went through this lull period where everything just looked like curved buildings and that was about all they did. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of gone through a renaissance now with sci-fi atmosphere, and Green Lantern's a prime example of this because every location just looks different. Sometimes you got forests, sometimes you have these weird like organic rock buildings, sometimes you got these really interesting complex computer looking civilizations and stuff, and it's just great to see it done and all the variety that you get. And the example that probably pops out the most to me personally is back in Brightest Day, or Blackest Night / Brightest Day, because we've got a lot of scenes on there, when you got to see the planet Zamaron that the Star Sapphires were on, and just how everything was made out of that pink crystal, and just the strange, interesting complexities of it. It was kind of like, it was like a little girl's room on acid.
Well,
because everything's just so pink, but it's so strange and intricate, almost to the point that it gets creepy. But there are hot chicks walking around in, basically bikinis.
So it's
made
no
out
longer creepy.
It's no longer creepy. It's like this weird, it's like a fever dream. It's like
really
someone
good trip.
goes. No, it's like someone goes into your mind and takes these plutonic images that are just set, like these plutonic forms, and then crashes them together like a toddler with Play-Doh. Ha! See what I did there? Clever me. And just crashes them together and makes some kind of weird mass that you don't even recognize, but you feel like you do, and then suddenly you love it.
And you want to make children with it, what?
Yes, exactly.
I wish I could comment on that, but I've never read any Green Lantern in my life, so but I can see where you're coming from, because one problem that a lot of sci-fi properties that take place in deep space have is they do the just black with white dots thing all the time. They never bother to characterize the universe. They never bother to say, yeah, space is a little more than that. It's a little bit more interesting than that. Oftentimes, you'll just get, just spaceships or people just over a black background with little white dots. That's not interesting to look at. And that brings me to this point of, I find it difficult and kind of tedious to read comics that don't have a specific atmosphere. Ones that just kind of, this thing happens, and the stuff around it, like the world it's taking place in, and the emotions of the characters, don't enunciate it and make it interesting. Like a lot of amateur comics have this problem of just like the world doesn't feel personified, so it's not a very interesting read. You know what I mean?
Yes, like Blood Pact, and our good old friend, what's his name? Right?
So everything written by Rob Liefeld.
Yes, Rob Liefeld. Yes. Muscles
actually,
and just like a tree in the background. That's gritty.
To comment on that, actually, a really good example of what you're talking about, Bill, where it can either really work against it because it's just complete lack of atmosphere, or it can work really well if it's a very good character story, so you're just focused that much on the character, is flat one-color backgrounds. You saw it a lot more back in the day, but you still see it a lot now, especially when books are rushed, but just... It's so strange because it's so much easier to do backgrounds now than it used to be, but yet we're still getting, one solid color backgrounds behind the characters, and it's weird to see that.
Yeah. And I think that can work when the characters' dialogue and actions are creating a specific atmosphere, like just their actions and emotions. But a lot of the time in comics, because as Milan was saying in his little explanation before, they don't have sound and they don't have music or the way people talk or sound effects, so you rely much more on what you see behind the characters and the descriptions of what you see behind the characters to give a sense of that world that these things are happening in. So I think as long as the characters' emotions are well pronounced enough, I don't think that you necessarily need to have a world around them that's interesting and unique, but it definitely doesn't hurt.
I got a really good example on what Bill was saying about how comics tend to really good comic book creators use the lack of sound to their advantage, and in their writing make you imagine sound. So there's that literary aspect to comic books, and a great example of that is the original Kree-Skrull War epic back in the 70s. I believe it was it was in the Avengers title. I think it was Starlin who wrote that. Was it Starlin? I'm not sure, but I'll look at that. I'm sure it'll pop up like a little verification on the screen. But basically, the very first issue, well, the whole, I think it's about 5 issues. This whole, Kree-Skrull War. Basically, it starts out with the Vision opening up, he's all beaten up, and he walks into the he's walking into the Avengers mansion, and just I'm gonna say it's Starlin, but if I'm wrong, please correct me. He just describes it like he just describes every tiny little sound in the, like you can see, like he just has this very poetic Shelleyan descriptions of the sounds. Like you hear a sound, you hear all the tiny noises of the city in the background, and then the doors swing open, and then the Vision walks in, and she's like, have you ever heard an ant scream? I have. It's like the pits of hell opening up for you. It just has such an amazing voice to it. He adds sound to comic books.
And let me just say this, sometimes I think that can come off as pretentious though. Like, sometimes I feel like if you do that, there should be a reason for it, like story-wise, like that's gonna pronounce something that's gonna happen in the story later, emotion a character's gonna feel later. Like, if a writer does that and then something not so important in the plot or something not very interesting happens, it comes off as pretentious to me.
Oh, it can. Like, if it's not a good writer, it does come off really pretentious.
A
But,
lot of people trying to imitate Frank Miller do this, and it's really irritating.
yeah, but the thing about Frank Miller, he's more of a flinty, hard-boiled type. This is Starlin's more of a floppy-cuffed poet-like guy. But the fact he really got the cosmic and in the 70s cosmic acid comics of the Marvel Age. They really got that whole floppy cuffed cosmic philosopher thing going on. And in the Kree Skull War, it was an alien invasion unlike any other alien invasions in the Marvel universe. Sure, we had like Stone Man and Thor and like all that silly sci-fi but stuff like those types of invasions. But with the Kree Skull War, it's just he just described this whole like it was amazing. And it was kind of like Jack Kirby's Norse-like, more like New Gods type of a thing, but polished up to a chrome finish.
All right. That's interesting. Unfortunately, I've never read it, so I can't really say anything. But
It's really good.
yeah, I assume so. I don't know. I don't read a lot of Marvel, but let me throw this one out there. Sandman.
Oh yeah.
Sam Keith did amazing things with the environments, particularly when they went into the dream realm. Oh my god. Like, it was odd that the real world, the backgrounds and the way the people were drawn and stuff were actually more foreign and much stranger to look at than were the things portrayed in the dream world. I mean, the dream world had that, weird curviness to it and everything, but it still felt and looked very familiar in a strange way. It had that level of comfort with the fact that you could imagine these things. These occur to you. When you think about a dream realm, this is more or less exactly what you think of. But with the real world, it just looks so creepy and so disturbed at times, and then at other times it was so just lacking. Like, there was that, I can't remember which issue it was, it's in the first volume, where he and Death go out for a day, just walk around, do their thing. And the backgrounds, unless something important is happening, it's almost stark white. Particularly when they first start to talk, it's almost completely just blank white with the fewest bit of lines, so you can tell the environment that they're in, and just a little splash of color for just the sake of putting some color into it, so you can differentiate the background from the people, since both of them are white as hell. And it's just so interesting how Sam Keith was able to do that. To me, is the real world looked foreign compared to a place that does not exist.
Yeah. The thing about Sandman that I really like is Sandman, the guardians of the gate. There's just the unicorn, the griffin, and the dragon guarding the gate of the Sandman's castle. I just love that for some reason. Oh my god, that's so cool. Yeah. By the way, since you brought up Sandman, it's a really great thing, because I was gonna bring up a example of mood in I believe you guys have you read Death, the High Cost of Living? It was like a one-shot about death.
About Death, the character from
Gaiman's
world?
Sandman.
Maybe, I don't know. Was it the one with the Metamorpho lady?
No, it's the one where she's like she's human for a day, and you see things from the perspective of this blonde, teenager, like the
No,
smile.
I haven't read it.
Oh.
I haven't read it. I'm
It's
sorry.
really I'll send it over to you after the story. I'll send you the PDF, but it's really good. There's this guy basically. The whole story is just so full of atmosphere. It's so full of that whole late 90s, early 2000s punk rock, club, rock and roll scene thing to it, and it's just there's this guy looking for death and her ankh because he wants to get immortality, and he sends like a punk kid to lure them into an alley and steal it off them because he's I'll give you some money if you do this thing, and he gets the ankh and he shoots the kid, and basically there's a few pages where Death and this kid basically sit with this kid waiting for the ambulance to show up, and he's dying. The kid is dying, and there's this cigarette butt and this is a bad kid. This is just like a little prick, but they just sit up with him and wait for the ambulance with him, because he's dying, and it's just it was such at the back of a club, and there's like there's graffiti on the walls, and it's just it's so odd. It's one of that feeling that you get where you're just it's like early morning and you just been out with your friends, and it's just it's and you're just sitting back in an alley and you're just all burned out and just sitting there with a guy who's vomiting, and it's just it's one of those like kind of it's nearing morning and you had a long night, and it's just it's gonna get worse, or this is the worst part and you're just getting over the worst part of the night. Someone's being hurt. It's such an odd. I get such an odd feeling from that scene. It's hard to describe it. It's kind of like a neon sort of melancholy.
Okay. Bill, do you have any I feel like we've given a lot of examples, but we haven't talked about when it's effective to use it, when it's least effective to use it, ways that we feel are the best ways to use it, the best methods of using it. Bill, do you have
the best methods of using atmosphere?
Yeah, the best method of communicating atmosphere, let me say, because obviously you have to use atmosphere. You can't just not have atmosphere unless you...
True.
Because, I mean, even if you have a blank page, that's still atmosphere. The metaphorical
Well, I think something
implications
can
of a blank
have an
page.
unspecified atmosphere. I mean, I'm not sure if it's possible to have a lack of atmosphere. That would just be, unless you're going for that, but that's interesting all of itself.
No, that's what I'm saying, is the lack of atmosphere is an atmosphere.
Exactly.
Because you can't not have atmosphere. It's an integral part. It's just how you're using it, whether you're aware of you're using it or not. So do you have a final example you'd like to get in, Bill, before we start talking about it a little more, like, metaphorically here?
Sure. This is more of a generalized example again. IDW's books right now, I don't know if you guys are reading or anything from them, but they're publishing the Godzilla stuff right now, so of course I'm reading that. But all of their books, all of their books have this very specific art style. Like this very kind of sketchbook, near roughness to them that's very real. It's not like this really digitally colored, clean-looking appearance you get from most of the DC Marvel stuff out right now. I mean, there are exceptions to that, of course, like the current Hulk series doesn't look too clean, but most of their books look very clean. IDWs don't look like that. They look like these very, very detailed, but not clean, polished kind of look to them. That's not a problem. And it's this atmosphere of like, what's the word? Like this very specific feeling of I'm not sure, just like this very imaginative, interesting series of worlds that you want to experience, and just that atmosphere is one of those things that's very hard to describe for me. But I love all of IDW's books for their very stylized and kind of again sketchbook roughness kind of art style that gives this very specific atmosphere. Ultimate problems with IDW's books is that they all have that, so
well, it's one universe, Bill.
Doesn't feel like Godzilla's Earth, and Star Trek, the Star Trek universe doesn't quite feel like the Star Trek universe, but just as a general sense, I like that kind of atmosphere.
So it's basically, I know what you're talking about because I tend to skim through some of the IDW stuff, but it's almost like the best of the art school DIY comics.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, it's just I know what you're talking about, and I love to pick up some IDW stuff because it just does some really good stuff there. And speaking about Godzilla, since you love Godzilla so much, from
Was it
what
really
I've
that obvious?
yes,
Really? I had no idea. What do you
Well,
mean? This
yeah,
is
I'm-
like a complete shock to me.
Yes,
Can't you
yes.
hear the shock and surprise in my voice?
well, basically, a brief the brief thing about the Godzilla books. There's just such a pop art funness to the books, especially to the covers. I mean, just like I tend to like I buy like an issue here and there and like skim through at the comic book shop, and there's just such the art is so detailed and colorful. It's like a punch in the face
Yeah.
for my ass. It's so much fun. It's like, oh my god, billions of people are dying and I'm smiling.
It's very fun to look at, and also it's pretty well written too. I'm really liking the current series
Oh,
they're
it's
doing.
really good. Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
Oh, one more thing. One more example before we move on.
Milan, you've had like 4 examples and you've
Well,
talked
it's
5
only like
minutes
2
with each
seconds.
one.
Okay.
Alright, if you say once, I am cutting you off. Go.
Have you guys read Glory from Image?
No.
It's awesome.
I don't read anything from Image.
It similar to
Oh, off. You said this is done.
okay, fine, I'm sorry.
Anyway. Alright, so
It does buttfuck Hysteria very well, but go ahead.
okay.
That's always fun.
Yes.
Anyway. Alright, so how do you feel? Alright, let me pose this question instead. Do you feel the use of atmosphere, the use of background atmosphere, let me specify, the use of atmosphere in the backdrop of the panels is better used in a story that's more character focused or more plot focused?
Character focused.
That really has to do with the writing because
Well, just answer the question. How you personally feel. Do not cop out.
I'm not copping out. It's just
It's a cop out if you do not answer the question and instead dance around it with answers.
I'm not dancing around it. For me, it really has to do with the story. Sure, there are some really great examples that little background detail works with the character development and all, and just focusing on the character. But other times, the background detail really adds to the atmosphere of the world and the actual character development. But I don't know. I guess I have to go on the more background detail there is, the more the character is pronounced. From personally, at
Yeah.
least. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was
If
gonna
it's
say
just a-
too.
I'm gonna actually side on plot detail, and I'm gonna cite a very specific example from a book I didn't even like, but it's what stuck with me from that book. It is one of the recent issues of Action Comics, and it was that one where he was with the Legion of Heroes, or whatever the hell they are.
Legion of Super.
Superheroes.
Yeah, Legion of Superheroes.
The
And
name
he's having a flashback to some time on the Kent farm, and he comes and you see the flashback played out in 3 or 4 panels, and he comes back from the flashback and goes, "Oh, that's weird. The barn was blue and red. I must be having blah 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 blah." And it was so interesting because I didn't notice it until he said it, and then I went back and I go, "Oh my god, he totally changed the color of the barn in the background of the panels." It really helped to not only, it tells you something about the character, for one, but it was an integral part of the plot, and it was used in the background. And I feel that's a really good place to use just background imagery, is when it's an integral part of the plot. And I know I was saying we're going to get off Batman, but to totally contradict myself and go back to Batman,
Of
at the
course.
very beginning of Grant Morrison's run in Batman issue 655, you see on, I think it's the 3rd page, graffiti on the wall behind him that says Zur in R, which, 30, 40 books later is revealed to be the biggest plot point of Batman R.I.P.
Yeah.
The graffiti of Zur in R and the phrase popping up all over Grant Morrison's books. Like, I really prefer background detail, background atmosphere to be used to advance the plot. It can certainly tell you something about the character, but for me personally, I prefer background detail to tell you something about the plot that you won't notice the first time, and is something to go back and look at.
Oh, I agree
Fair enough.
completely.
I don't disagree. I think that it can work both ways and work both ways very well. I prefer characters though because I prefer when characters like the atmosphere of the area is used in that. I like the way the characters comment on it, the way they feel about it, the way they look at the field that outstretches across the horizon, the way they feel about the gritty city they're walking through. And that can tell you a lot about how a character looks at life and how a character is feeling at the current moment. Like if you're watching a guy walk down Fifth Avenue in New York, and he's just talking about how much he hates all the people walking around, you get the sense that he's a very antisocial kind of character, and a character who is going through like a period in his life where nothing's really going his way, people aren't,
A glum bugger.
he doesn't like people at the current time in his life. And that's how I like it used. And you paint a picture of both the world this guy is living in and the character himself in that couple panels. Now, I also think that Ian's point is not only valid, but great when it's used because, it's a very cool idea in the signs of a clever writer in that he's putting stuff in the world that the characters aren't commenting on. It feels more natural. So, I agree, but I do
See, and I said, I totally agree with you, Bill. I think it can be used both ways to great effect. It's just me personally, I prefer it to be used more toward plot development than toward character development. I prefer the scales to be tipped. Like, I like it when they're balanced, but I prefer them to be tipped toward the plot as opposed to the character. Because especially with comic books, when we're in our character's head, most of the 9 times out of 10 we're getting to read their thoughts. We really don't need more in the world to show us character development.
One word: Watchmen.
That's 2 words.
It's a conjunction.
Owned.
It's a conjunction. Anyway.
Okay.
So,
but that is just the best
but that
example.
that is exactly the example I was thinking of when I was saying, oh, that guy is walking down the street. Rorschach in Watchmen does that constantly. It's not Fifth Avenue. He doesn't specify what street he's on, but that's what I was thinking of. Was just Rorschach walking down the street, talking about the gutters and just
And like I said, it can certainly be used well. I'm just saying I prefer it to be used more for plot. Like it's just a personal preference thing. This is not, the end all be all decisions. Unless of course I was like, the god of the world. Oh wait, shit, I am. All right, this is the end all be all decision. You two are objectively wrong about this.
But the bit.
But Ian, I'm an atheist. No, I'm kidding. But
Yes.
No,
so you don't exist.
So you don't exist. And then Ian died, and me and Milan both went and got a drink.
Yeah. Oh, by the way.
So Ian's dead.
Yeah, well.
Because he doesn't exist.
Oh, obviously, because we're atheists. But the best example of that is Watchmen, because for what that thing that doesn't exist was talking about. In Watchmen, there are things like the background detail is used to tell most of the story. Well, it helps a lot. Yeah, and it's just, is the thing that doesn't exist gonna be silent all this time? I know he doesn't exist, but
I certainly hope so, because that would be wonderful. But
no,
but I don't know if I can, honest to God, say I prefer one over the other. I just get more enjoyment out of a character, the world, commenting on the character and the character commenting on the world. But I'm not necessarily sure there is or has to be one over the other. I think you can either do both at the same time or do both at different times and both work, to each other's advantage. So I just think that overall, whatever the point of what you're writing is, the atmosphere of your world has to support that. If you're making a horror movie, the world has to look somewhat intimidating, and the character has to be in a somewhat tense attitude. Like, if it depends. It's one of these things. It depends.
The character really has to.
Hey, Coach Door, I got some. Oh, thank God! I thought I was not going to exist, but then I realized I was thinking, so I realized I was existing. Whew, close one.
Fucking philosophy.
Thanks, Descartes. I owe you a beer. Whew.
Ian, did you just throw yourself off a building and then just run back up the stairs?
No, he popped back into existence. That takes.
Because I realized I was thinking, so I had
Yeah.
to exist.
Okay. Okay.
Thinking is quite hard for some people. Not me.
Yeah,
though.
I know, Milan. We know you struggle with that every day. We don't mean to be insensitive. See,
This
see what
show
I
is more for a learning experience for Milan than it is actually for your entertainment. It's kind of like a practice in critical thinking.
Thank you, Bill.
You're
Is your middle name Judas? Perhaps.
Real-
Frank,
real-
that's got one. Yeah, it's got a similar amount of letters, but I hate you both, so it's fine.
Aw.
What
We
the-
love you, Bill, don't we, Ian? We love Bill.
Oh, I love parts of Bill.
Oh, me too. But which parts are your favorite, Ian?
Dude, I totally call the liver.
Oh man, I wanted the kidney. The kidneys are great.
Milan,
Can
that's
I-
two different body parts, so you can still have it. Remember we were talking about the whole critical.
I will eat your heart.
Because I
wait.
can keep my PS3. It's fine.
Oh no, I want his PS3, but I want his heart also. No, Ian, you call the.
Bill. Milan,
Okay,
Dibs.
okay. I want that. I
Here,
want
Will,
that.
you can say that I get your liver and your heart.
Okay, I want that little piece of fat that he has underneath his chin. It's not exactly a second chin, but I want to eat that. I want to fry it up.
Oh, real quick, guys. While we continue to talk about which parts of Bill we will eat once Milan and I become full-fledged cannibalists, we're waiting on the membership to go through their papers yet.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
Commercial. Okay, we'll be right back.
They gone plumb crazy in the streets following the release of that Handsome Devil's new album. Housewives are running naked, teens are ripping up magazines and knocking over shelves in the record stores. It's like he's giving them some kind of freedom, some kind of terroristic anti-freedom freedom.
Yeah, Jay, I've been checked that for a minute, yo, and it's crazy dope. Crazy dope.
So you see what they've done here? They've taken man's primal urges and fused them with technology, creating, I don't know, just a mindfuck, a total mindfuck.
Yeah, it's a total fucking mindfuck.
I'm downstairs and I'm doing my laundry and I'm listening to the CD and I start seeing crazy shit. I'm wondering who does God's laundry.
So I was like sitting there forever just drawing spirals and spirals and spirals and spirals and spirals and spirals and spirals and
I'm
spirals.
scoring.
Well, that's pretty fucking crazy, Al. Now this. Well, the first song it hits you like this, the bag full of whammy. You know that song, it goes, there's no more seats in heaven, so get your tickets in advance. Well, you get the idea. I myself am more outraged about the effect on these teens, who are dishonoring local law, dishonoring authority figures, and dishonoring America.
It's quite simple, really. The kids are sick of the rubbish. They're sick of this Bert Jolie Jellinen, Ben Lellifer, Boundhouse Feather Fluffer Nutter. What was I talking about? Damn.
You got it, man. Those are my guys. My guys.
He's been listening all week. I don't know.
It's evil.
Yeah, it's evil.
You guys who just listened to that whole hoo-ha back there. So, Ian, if I got this right, you've got my liver.
Mm-hmm.
Milan, you have my kidney.
Yep.
You guys are disputing over my heart, but since Ian is cooler than you, I'm gonna give him the heart.
Can't we just share? Sharing
No,
is caring.
fuck I don't care about you. That's why we're not sharing.
All right,
Hold on.
Ian gets the left atrium. Milan, you get the right atrium.
No,
Okay.
Bill, we will not share. I am giving
Dude,
Milan.
there's enough for everyone, man. Well, for both
No,
of us.
there is not. The heart is the most valuable part. How else am I supposed to live for all eternity if I do not eat Bill's heart?
Dude, you eat babies. Why do you need two reasons to stay
I do
alive?
not eat babies. I do not eat babies. With babies,
Eat
it's
toddlers. You gotta be specific, Milan.
Yeah, with babies, it's a minute on the lips and a lifetime on the hips. You gotta eat toddlers. They're more
Oh,
exercise.
sorry, dude. Sorry, okay? I'm sorry. But anyway, continue, Bill. So Ian gets the heart. Continue. What do I get next?
Well, I'll give you the trachea, but that's gonna be a little small. But since I hate you, that'll work.
Oh, I like the trachea. The trachea is good.
Since I'm just to spite you, Milan, I'm gonna give Ian that little fat under the chin, just to spite you.
You're an ass.
Milan, you get my eyes. I don't know how
Ooh,
that's
goody.
I don't know
Goody,
how that's
goody.
gonna taste, but and then Milan, Ian, I just mixed your two's names. That was funny. Ian, you got my ears. So that's. I want to keep everything else for organ donation. So that's all you guys get.
What about your face?
That's gonna go to organ donation. Just in case anyone wants to put a face on their ass, which I think is gonna become more of a pronounced art form in the future. I want to save it for that.
Yeah, it's becoming a thing now. You know, among the young
faces on their asses. It's constantly.
Yeah,
now back to
the
atmosphere.
Assholes.
Back to atmosphere. Get it?
Yeah, okay.
And now that we've completely had everyone leave the conversation because just of how disgusting it's been, back to atmosphere.
Okay. All right. So we were talking about that, and I don't think we're really gonna come down either way on what's the proper use of background atmosphere. But let's talk more about the language used in the sense of atmosphere, because that's something that good writers do, is they choose words based on their poetic metaphorical context and resonance, and that certainly adds to atmosphere. Yeah. It's the difference between saying that my house burnt down, or my house is charred and in ruins on the ground, after there was some kind of talk about like grilling with your father earlier in the chapter. Like let's say in one chapter you're talking about how you used to love to grill with your father and you love the smell of the charred and burnt coal or something. And then later in the book, after going through a depression based maybe on your father's death, your house burns down. It's the difference between saying my house burnt down and my house lies in charred ashes.
Yeah, definitely.
Like that's language is a significantly different part, and it adds a lot more.
And language is much more effective to me than visuals can be, because visuals can be interpreted in different ways. I feel like language is more specific. Like this is the way the writer wants you to feel at this current time. I can name a lot more examples in film, but since we're not talking about that, again, Batman Year One and Dark Knight Returns are both great examples, but just overall, I think the way you describe an environment, the way you describe how a character feels about an environment, it's much more effective than having a character cry because he's looking at a cemetery. You know what I mean? Like the way they describe it is more powerful than the way it looks.
Mm-hmm.
I love when comics when people use journal entries as.
Hello? Juan, you still there? Bill?
But through Watchmen, you're reading Rorschach's journal, and the whole book is basically you're reading Rorschach's journal. At the very end, his journal gets delivered to a post office, and the very last line of the book.
Let me jump in real quick. You're not reading Rorschach's journal throughout the whole book. There are the chapters where it's
I know, yeah.
No, I'm like saying like when you're in like Dr. Manhattan's head and other stuff like that. So I mean, like when you're reading stuff about Rorschach, yeah, you're definitely in Rorschach's journal, or you're in the psychiatrist's patient notes. But just to nitpick. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. But that kind of mechanic can be used really interestingly, because at the end of Watchmen, the very last panel, the very last words are Rorschach's journal. Burst a dog in gutter with burst stomach, basically, and it goes, and there's like a Mobius loop. It goes all the way around.
It was a dog in the road, just to continue the nitpicking.
Yeah, it was a dog. It was a dog with a burst stomach in the gutter.
In an alley, and then he talks about the gutters will scaffold over. It doesn't really matter.
Okay. Oh, and one more thing, one more example from Watchmen before we move on. Ian was saying how visuals, how they help to tell the story, and how there's a wonderful mixture of that in Watchmen, and especially in the Dr. Manhattan period where he's reminiscing and his consciousness is flitting through the periods in his life through time, and just that really works well there, and it just makes such a wonderful, disconnected, almost omnipotent view of the world.
Definitely. Watchmen definitely used a lot of language. For example, Veidt, his character reveal is always considered so surprising, but when you go back and you pore over the details of what he is saying, the words on the page, it's very, apparent that this guy is not representing himself accurately to us, And then there's also the mini comic within the comic of Watchmen, the pirate story.
The Black Freighter.
It's Tales from the Black Freighter, yeah.
Yeah. That was so well done, and it added to not only the universe as a whole in that story, but it added to the moral of the story, because a lot of people complain, well, you don't know how Vight's story ends. No, you know exactly how it ends, because the Black Freighter is I don't want to call it a metaphor, because it is, but it's not. It's more of a simile. The Black Freighter story is a simile to where Adrian's story will end.
Yeah.
And that was primarily language. I cannot recall a single image from the Black Freighter comic except for him sitting on that raft of carrion. Except for the one image of him sitting on the raft of carrion and trying to eat the bird, I cannot recall a single image from it. Only the story itself, only the words on the page. So take that how you will.
And it's an interesting little mirror image to the actual, Watchmen world, if you think about it. It's really great.
That's what I was saying. It adds, not only on the literal level of it being a comic within a comic does it add to the universe, but the way the character is told, the way what's going on in the story definitely adds to the world, and creates a very good mirror.
Say, what do you guys think of the, recent, before Watchmen books that
haven't even picked up and thumbed through one.
I've been reading the Rorschach one and the Night Owl one, and I'm kind of with the majority on this. They're nothing like especially interesting, but they're decent reads. I really like the Night Owl one. The Rorschach one has failed to impress me so far, but except for visually. But I don't know.
That's the thing with Azzarello, man. He either hits the bullseye or he just hits someone in the eye that's standing on the other side of the room of the dartboard.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing, and it sucks because I actually was like, oh, the Rorschach one is going to be the best because it's Lee Bermejo and Brian Azzarello. No. I honestly, of what I've read, I think the Night Owl one is the most interesting because, especially the first issue.
I don't know. I'm thinking just because he was my favorite character in it all, and I would have liked to read more of him because he definitely does not get as much time as I would have preferred. I'm considering when they start putting these out in trades, picking up the Dr. Manhattan one just to read it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, what was your point with that, Milan?
I don't know, just a little thing. It's because the criticism is DC is basically publishing fan fiction.
Fair enough. It feels like that at points.
It is, but because Watchmen, it's so self-contained, and it just more than 20 years later, before Watchmen, where we just got some fan fiction off the internet. Well, some of the fan fiction, our creators that work for us now, wrote when they were, teenagers, and they're illustrating it.
Fan fiction about Rorschach. He beats stuff up to pimp. You know what I mean? My biggest.
See, actually, let me just tangent mode here real quick. I really do want DC or Marvel to put out a book called Fan.
Oh yeah, you talked about this one.
I did?
Yeah.
See, that would be the shit. Video. I would pick that up. Not last video. I know I didn't talk about last.
No, it's been a while. I don't even know if you said it on video, so.
Let me talk about it just because we're
not
sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I really want DC or Marvel or anyone to put out a book called Fan, in which the whole premise is the fans send in a script for a comic book, and artists send in art for a comic book, and just demo stuff, right? And the editors, it has just an editor that looks through all the art and looks through all the scripts that come in and goes, okay, we're gonna have this script and we're gonna send it to this artist. And they send it through and give the people the emails that they need to talk to each other to make sure the collaboration goes well, and then they put that book out. It can happen in any kind of continuity you want. You just have to be using their characters that they have the rights to put out and sell. And, you wouldn't even have to pay the people. The only person you have to pay is the editor.
Yeah.
Everyone else, just to have their name on a book that is going to be in millions of shops. I would take that. You don't have to give me a check the first time.
I fully agree. Oh, yeah, like, as an introductory thing into the industry, sure, I mean, after 10 years, I would kind of want to get something out of it, but, I would buy that too. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you'd get bad stories every so often. You'd get bad art.
Like, for the most part.
It'd be worth it for the good stuff that you know is going to happen. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
How would they judge it? Will it be like a vote in? They're gonna put it up on
just have an editor.
To have an experience that are not like some newbie off the street, like someone who knows how comics are supposed to work and what is judgeably a good comic. Those are the scripts that get published. That's the artist that gets picked to do work that gets published. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So what,
they could certainly do a fan vote, but I wouldn't really like that because it'd be whoever has the most friends on Facebook that gets published every month.
Exactly.
Anyway, that's just my thought, and I really think that would be great. And it's a weird place to go from saying that the 4 Watchmen books are not very good because they're like fan fiction to say, we should have a fan fiction book.
No, but here's the thing. They're presented as being in the same universe, and it feels nothing like the same universe. Again, of the stuff I've read, it feels nothing like the universe Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons created.
Well, it's not, because it's fan fiction.
But it's not presented as fan fiction.
I don't care how it's presented. It's fan fiction. In my heart of hearts, I don't see it as actually part of that universe because that's just fan fiction.
Neither do I, but it bothers me that, like, it's presented as such, and the way the writers, tell stories in the universe, the way the artist draws it, it doesn't feel like that universe. And I'm not just going to say it's fine because it's fan fiction, because I just can't sit with that.
It's still a major criticism, and actually, since you were just talking about it, I think this is the perfect place to really, sit down and lay our hands down on the table and say that atmosphere is not necessarily the most important part of storytelling. You have to know how to write characters, you have to know how to set up your plot, but it can really make or break a story. It can take a very average story and it can make it something fantastic. Or it can take a very good story, and if it's lacking in a resonant atmosphere, it'll just fall apart. And even if you have an okay story, if you don't add atmosphere or you don't match atmosphere to tie into the Watchmen thing we were just discussing, you can have something that's very unsatisfactory.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're gonna wrap up the discussion on that note. All right, and we're going to talk about next week the first season of the CGI Green Lantern animated series. And I'm really interested to do that because I'm a big Green Lantern fan. Milan, I've heard you talk about GL a time or two, but you don't seem like you're in love. You don't seem on the same level with me. And Bill, I know you don't.
I'm more of a casual,
Yeah, I know you're more casual. I'm not like hardcore, but I'm much more into it than I feel you are. And I know Bill, like, haven't you told me that the only Green Lantern thing you've seen is the movie?
The movie and when he shows up in Justice League.
Okay, yeah, so that should be a really interesting variation on opinion. So we're going to talk about the Green Lantern, first season of the Green Lantern animated series. I know 2 episodes are out from season 2, but we're not going to really get into that. So once again, if you have anything that you'd like directly addressed, send us a file on Skype or PM me on YouTube here, and we'll play the file on the show, and we'll address it directly and talk about it, and thank you for your Skype in, and Milan added his incentive of drawing the picture for you.
Oh yes, that's right. That was just about that. Thank you, Ian. So remember, if you're the first person to give us the Skype call, just send me a picture of your face, and I will draw in the description of what position or in what action, pose, or situation you want me to draw you in. And the first guy to leave a Skype in, I'm your official art bitch for at least one picture.
Cool. All right, and until next time, we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.